Beautiful souls, welcome to the sacred journey of Kal Mantra. Embrace divine grace. Let the celestial vibrations uplift your spirit and guide you toward inner peace, abundance, and divine blessings. Open your heart, chant with devotion, and awaken the infinite grace within you.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into this really fascinating intersection of cosmic mythology and colonial narratives. We're looking at historical Assam. We're going to see how a deeply rich, self-defined ancient identity totally collided with the pens and the biases of European travelers. Basically, it's a story of stars and a story of empires. Let's get into it. So, what actually happens when a city of stars gets discovered by a world of empires? Keep that central conflict in the back of your mind as we go through this today, because we're looking at a huge clash between an ancient, highly sophisticated astrological science and the expanding, categorizing force of Western imperialism. To really grasp this region's original identity, you've got to look at its ancient name, Pragjyotishpur. Break down the Sanskrit etymology, and it's pretty incredible. Prag means east, Jyotish translates to astrology, and Pura is city. Put the whole thing together and you get the eastern city of astrological science. Right from the start, this place established a grand, self-defined cosmic identity. They weren't just tied to the land, they were literally looking up at the stars.
Part 1. City of Eastern Astrology.
Now, according to local mythology and ancient texts, this region was founded by the mythical king Nargasur. It was a civilization deeply, deeply tied to sun-worshipping traditions, heavily influenced by Daivajna Brahmins who revered the sun god as the absolute supreme being. Actually, ancient scriptures held Pragjyotishpur in such high regard that they equated it to the city of Indra, the king of the gods. That's the sheer scale of the reverence we're talking about here. And this mythology eventually built into a really fascinating historical reality. Long before the famous Ahom kingdom took root in the 13th century, Pragjyotishpur and the Kamrup region were governed by a succession of seriously powerful ancient rulers. From 350 to 650 CE, you have the Varman dynasty. They really laid the foundations here. Then they were followed by the Malefic dynasty up to 900 CE and the Pala dynasty up until 1100 CE. These dynasties ruled over a highly developed civilization, one that was completely renowned for its intricate craftsmanship and intense celestial studies.
Part 2. Temple of 9 Planets.
High up on the Chitrachal Hills of Guwahati sits the Navagraha Temple, and it is absolutely wondrous. This temple houses 9 Graha lingams, representing the 9 celestial bodies of Hindu astrology. But it wasn't just a place of worship. It acted as a vital astronomical and spiritual hub. It physically represented the universe on Earth, and it's widely believed that this very temple is what gave the ancient city of Pragjyotishpur its magnificent name. And the way they mapped out the heavens is just brilliant. Each of the 9 Shivalingas is covered in a specific, symbolically colored garment. So you have orange for Surya, the sun, silver for Chandra, the moon, red for Mangala, Mars, all the way down to black for Rahu, and a multicolored garment for Ketu. It's essentially a vibrant, physical map of the solar system, constructed right there in the temple sanctum. The temple also represents just incredible historical resilience. It survived a massive earthquake in 1697 and was gloriously rebuilt in 1752 by the Ahom king Rajeswar Singha. It's connected to the sacred Silpukuri Pond down in the valley, and it actually remains an active center today. It houses a library of ancient astrological manuscripts and even a telescope. Talk about a living, breathing intellectual legacy.
Part 3. Enter the European travelers.
Okay, so to understand the narrative shift that happens next, we're grounding this explainer in some brilliant academic research. Specifically, we're looking at a 2023 University of Hyderabad dissertation by Dr. Mona Lisa Kaklari on European travel writing in Assam. Her research meticulously reveals how historical texts from the 16th right through the 18th centuries fundamentally attempted to rewrite Assam's identity completely from the outside in. Because suddenly, this relatively secluded region was getting visited by a total flood of Europeans. Starting with the English merchant Rolf Fitch in the 1580s, you had explorers, scholars, invaders, merchants, and soldiers arriving. Frenchmen like Tavernier and Bernier, British military men like Captain Welsh. They all came with their own motives. And, well, as the saying goes, whoever holds the pen ultimately gets to write the history.
And these travel writers viewed the world through a really strict binary.
On one side, you have what they called the Occidental Self, that's the Europeans, portraying themselves as grounded in practical reason, civilized, ethical, and perfectly balanced. On the flip side, they instantly categorized the locals as the Oriental Other, who they described as having a vivid imagination, sure, but ultimately irrational, lawless, and backwards.
Part 4. Shaping the Oriental Narrative.
The first major tool they used is a concept called infantilization. This is a representational strategy used to portray the other as entirely incapable of independent decisions. In these European texts, the East was constantly equated with a stubborn, irrational child whose mental growth was hindered. And why did they that? Because portraying them as childlike perfectly justified the supposed need for guidance, authority, and control from the enlightened West. It was a linguistic tool used to completely strip away the agency of the complex, star-studding civilization we were just talking about. Next up is chronopolitics. This brilliantly illustrates how these travelers manipulated the concept of time itself. When they documented their colonial journeys, they often depicted themselves as moving forward in geographic space, but somehow backward in chronological time. They treated the locals as if they were literally trapped in the past, portraying them as medieval, primitive, or archaic. This timeline manipulation was a deliberate political action. It excluded non-dominant groups from the present day, which of course justified oppression under the guise of bringing them into modernism.
Then you have the gaze. When a European traveler stood and looked out at the landscapes and peoples of Assam, it was not some harmless act of curiosity. The gaze is an exertion of power. By classifying, identifying, and interpreting the subject, the viewer establishes their own supremacy. They monitor the subject to fix their identity into a neat, easily controllable little box. In this context, observation was quite literally a tool for establishing absolute dominance. And the text didn't stop there either. Other tactics included eroticization and moralization. The whole jargon of exploration was heavily influenced by gender hierarchies. Discovering new places was often depicted as exposing uncharted, quote-unquote, seductive terrain for the mastery of the civilized European man. On top of that, they weaponized moral superiority. They'd use language of disease, pollution, and dirt to debase the native subjects, reinforcing colonial tyranny by basically inculcating a deep sense of inferiority.
Part 5. Who writes history? So the absolute crucial point we have to take away from Dr. Kakalari's research is perfectly captured in her own words. Even first-hand accounts should be approached critically, as they might have been manipulated to suit the author's hidden motives, which could distort reality. We must always question the motives behind historical documentation. A travel journal isn't just a mirror reflecting the absolute truth. It's often a carefully crafted lens, designed to project the author's own worldview and biases onto an entirely new land.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on today. We've seen how a magnificent, complex center of Eastern astrology was reduced and reframed by the stroke of a colonial pen. So ask yourself this. How would the history of your own home be written if an outsider with a hidden agenda was the one holding the pen? Really makes you question the historical texts we just take for granted, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer today. Stay curious, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.
Struggling with health, financial worries, wealth, relationships, or career? Don't let these challenges hold you back. Harness the ancient power of authentic Rudraksha, planetary remedies, and Vedic astrology to restore balance and attract success. But act fast. These sacred remedies are in limited stock. Visit callmantra.com today to transform your life.
If this resonated with you, join our spiritual journey. Your support keeps us growing. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So like, comment, share with friends, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.